Okay, as we continue our study of ions in the chemistry unit, physical science 20 here, anions are what we're going to talk about today. Yesterday we talked about cations, right? Where are they? Cations right here. And we said they are positive. Cats, pause, right? Anions are almost as easy to remember. Anions, you think of a negative ion. Okay? An, a negative ion. Got it? So it's easy to remember. Okay? And, for these ones, it's almost as easy as cations. With the positive ions, you just take the element name and add ion behind it. If it has more than one possible charge, you put a Roman numeral between the name and ion, right? For negative ions, what you have to do is one little extra thing. At the end of the element name, you replace the suffix or the ending of the name with "ide." So, for example, what is S on the periodic table? What's S? Sulfur, okay? S is sulfur. So, sulfur, and you can spell it like this, or this is appropriate as well. And remember, we're talking about international, right? And we're also talking about different languages of science, and so there's different ways of acceptable spelling. So usually it's F, but PH for sulfur is okay too. So instead of the ER at the end, you see this? We trade that with ide. So it's sulfide, and this would be sulfide ion. Okay? So all the anions have IDE at the end. That is the monatomic ones. Okay? The polyatomic ones we'll talk about. The rules are a little bit different. They always have the same name. But if it's like this, okay? What about N? What's N on the periodic table? Nitrogen. So with the ion, what would you say? Nitride. Very good. Yeah. Nitride ion. You do not have to. No, you don't have to say whether it's -2 or -3 because nitrogen and sulfur only have one possible charge. Okay, and really for the negative ions, you'll find that they only have one possible charge, the negative ones. And why is that? Well, if we go back to this to look at our periodic table, you see all the negative ions here. Really, like here, they just have, they're either -1, -2, or -3. So they don't have multiple charges, the negative ones. So you don't ever have to use the Roman numerals. Good question, though. Okay, bromide ion, what does that one look like? Okay, tell me if this looks good to you. Does that look right? No, why does that not look right? Thank you. With element names, the first letter is always capitalized. And the second letter is always lowercase with the element symbol, sorry. Okay. On the names, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that means it's a -1. Yeah, with the -1 ions, you do not have to put a 1 there. You can just write the negative symbol. Okay, yeah, that's a good observation. If it's anything other than 1, you have to put the number. Okay, telluride ion. Telluride, that's actually a city, I think, Telluride, in the States, southern States. But what element would this come from? Now remember, this "ide" has been added, so what is one that starts with this? Tellurium. Yes. Okay, now where is that on your periodic table? 52, and it's negative. That is correct. So it's a Te2 minus. Okay. Telluride. Okay. All right, now why don't you try these? Just take a minute, and you write down these. I'll freeze the screen, and I'll show you my answers in a minute. Okay, you can go ahead and check what you did here for your 25 through 28. Should look something like this. A couple things I just want to point out. Fluoride is a bit of a different spelling. It's UO, it's not OU. So make sure, and yes, spelling is going to count on these for chemistry. Okay, you do have to spell the elements correctly. So this kind of thing, there's not a whole lot like this. Fluoride is one of the big ones, though. We usually do OU, right, for those kind of things. So UO is a bit strange for us. But yeah, fluoride is UO. Okay, and again, you don't have to say the charge on the negative ions. Okay, so if we move to this one here, you guys have already started here. This is the nitride ion, right? What is NO2? Do you remember that from yesterday? Nitrogen, oxygen. No, there's actually a name for this polyatomic ion. It'll be on the back of your periodic table there. It's nitrite, right? Right? Nitrite, right? Nitrite ion? Is that right? Okay. And so if you have N by itself, it's based on the element's name, nitrogen. You say nitride. If it's a polyatomic, it'll have a specific name for it. Okay. Nitride ion. This is what? Nitrate ion. Good. So these ones get confused a lot, these three. And so do these ones. Sulfide is, well, we just did that one, right? That's the S, 2 minus. Sulfate is SO3, 2 minus. And sulfate is SO4, 2 minus. How do you know if there's O in here? Well, it doesn't say oxygen anywhere in here, right? Like, you're right in the fact that I can see SULF, so I know that it's some kind of sulfur compound. What you need to just learn is that not every ion, not every compound is going to mention all of the elements. Okay, so you're right, there's no hint, there's no mention of oxygen in there, but what you have to start to learn is what ite and ate mean. And at this point, you know, I'll tell you about the differences here, but it's sort of not as important right now because I want you just to learn the basics. But when you have sulfate, sulfite, or nitrate, nitrite, okay, or iodate, iodite, things like that, the ATE one always has the more oxygens, and the ITE one has fewer oxygens. So nitrate is NO3 minus. Nitrite is one less oxygen, it's NO2. Now that doesn't help you as to how many, but just as you kind of get to know these ions and as you study these ions, that one thing will help you remember which one's which. Okay? So right now, don't worry about, you know, how the name relates to the formula right now. You have the chart, okay, and you will be able to use the chart whenever you want. But you should kind of start to try and familiarize yourself with this. So it's a good question. But no, oxygen's not mentioned in those names. All right, now this chart here, I'm going to maybe try and enlarge this a bit, but you have this in your handout. And this just kind of gives us a graphic kind of diagram, a flow chart, a picture of how we might name things. And this sort of format helps a lot of people just to kind of see everything at once and how they relate. So ions can be either cations, which remember are the positive, and anions, a negative, right? They can be one way or the other there. So there's the two main groups there. Cations can also be monatomic, that's one atom, or polyatomic, that's more than one atoms. There's not as many of these, that's true, especially you know, with the negative ones, there's more. With the positive, there's really, this is the most common, and you won't see too many other positive polyatomic ions than ammonium. But here are some of the common ones. And if you started to memorize, these ones would be good ones to memorize. Some of the rules over here, we just talked about IDE. Polyatomic, ITE and ATE are quite common. And sometimes IDE, there's a few there. These are some common ones that you can memorize there, like we talked about. So anyway, so this is a bit of a flow chart there. Some rules at the bottom. A monatomic cation with one possible charge, you just name the atom or the element and then put ion behind it. If it's a monatomic cation that has more than one possible charge, you do the name plus the Roman numeral in brackets, then ion, and so on. So these are just a summary of some of the rules we just talked about. Okay, so what I would like you to do, I would like you to do these 20 on your own. Just familiarize yourself with your periodic table. I'll give you about maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, to do these ones. Shouldn't be too difficult for you. But just go ahead and look at your periodic table and or that chart on the back of your periodic table with the polyatomic ions, and name the first 10 and write the formulas for the final 10, okay? So, why don't you go ahead and take a moment to do that. If you're watching this video later and you want to practice, just pause it right now and do these 10. And then you can do these final 10.